Rain hammered the glass walls of Levi Tech Tower, streaking down like the sky was weeping over the city. From his top-floor corner office, Benjamin Levi stood motionless, staring at the muted skyline of downtown Houston. His silver cufflinks gleamed under the dim recessed lights, and a half-drunk bourbon rested beside a closed MacBook. It was late, too late for anything but regret. His phone buzzed against the marble desk, the name on the screen nothing but unknown caller. He almost let it ring out. But something made him answer, something in his gut, a pull he couldn't explain. "Mr. Levi?" A woman's voice crackled, calm but firm. "This is Houston General. You're listed as the closest O-negative blood match for a patient in critical need." His eyes narrowed. "Who is it?" "I'm sorry, sir, we can't disclose that. But it's urgent, life-threatening. For a man known to weigh every decision in boardrooms, Benjamin didn't think twice." "I'll be there in 10. The elevator ride to the underground garage was silent. His mind ran through possibilities, a client, a distant cousin, a staff member. But no name came. He reached his Porsche and tossed his suit jacket into the back seat. The city streets glistened with water as he sped toward the hospital. Traffic was light, but his heart was heavy. Something wasn't sitting right. He parked crooked in the emergency lane and leapt out, the storm soaking his shirt in seconds. The red glow of the ER sign pulsed ahead like a warning. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and stress. Nurses hurried past, machines beeped rhythmically in the distance. A woman in scrubs, tall, slim, with kind eyes, approached him. "Nurse Levi," she introduced. "We'll take you back now. Thank you for coming." He followed without a word. Benjamin sat still as the nurse gently tightened the strap on his arm. "Roll up your sleeve, sir." He complied without protest, watching the small needle pierce his skin. Blood, dark, vital, began its slow stream through the tube. He never liked hospitals, never liked feeling exposed. But tonight, he didn't flinch. The nurse glanced up at him, her voice soft. "Not many men in your position rush out during a storm to donate. You surprised me." He offered a faint smirk. "I still remember what it means to be human. Barely." She didn't laugh, but her expression warmed. The process didn't take long, 20 minutes, maybe less. When it ended, Benjamin sat up, flexing his arm, as Nurse Levi handed him a juice box and a cold compress, like he was a schoolboy at a blood drive. "Standard protocol," she said, gesturing to the juice. "We need your body to recover a little." He popped the straw through the foil and took a sip. Artificial grape. Disgusting. He stood anyway, brushing invisible lint off his shirt. "Will you let me know if everything goes okay?" The nurse looked conflicted, but nodded. "Someone will—" As she walked off, he leaned against the cool hallway wall, tossing the empty juice box in a nearby bin. The ER hallway buzzed around him with its usual hum, doors sliding open, quiet cries, muted calls over the intercom. And then, screaming. Loud, urgent. "She's going into labor now, we can't wait!" Another voice shouted over the chaos, this one clearer. "The blood just came in, move it!" His eyes sharpened. Down the corridor, a stretcher came barreling around the corner, nurses clinging to the rails, a woman writhing on the bed in obvious pain. Sweat rolled down her temples. Her hospital gown was clutched in both fists. Braids tangled and damp clung to her face. The overhead lights caught her profile as she turned slightly, teeth clenched through a contraction. Then their eyes met. His world stopped. "Ben?" She gasped, voice hoarse and broken. "Daphne!" It was her, the woman he hadn't seen in 2 years, the woman he'd never stopped thinking about, the woman he walked away from for reasons he stopped believing in long ago. His legs turned to lead. The storm outside could have crashed through the windows, and he wouldn't have blinked. He took a single step forward, but she was already being wheeled past, her voice swallowed by another wave of agony. The hallway closed in around him. He turned slowly toward the direction they vanished. 2 nurses brushed past, carrying red-labeled blood bags, his blood, toward the same delivery room. His chest rose and fell unevenly. A strange heat bloomed behind his eyes. He was only supposed to donate blood tonight, and now she was in labor, with twins. Benjamin didn't move, not when the delivery room doors slammed shut behind her. Not when a nurse tried to guide him toward the waiting area. Not even when his assistant called again, asking about the Tokyo deal. He ended the call without a word and dropped into a seat, his elbows on his knees. Daphne Rivers. She looked exhausted, vulnerable, beautiful. He hadn't heard her voice in 2 years, not since the night she left his apartment without packing a single bag. Just her car keys and a whispered goodbye. She never asked him for money, never begged him to choose her. He remembered the first time they met, an outreach fundraiser in 3rd Ward. His company had donated tablets to her community youth centre, and she was the one giving the speech. No teleprompter, no script, just fire in her voice and clarity in her conviction. He was drawn to it. She called him out for using donations as a PR stunt, told him the kids didn't need logos on screens. They needed mentorship, real faces, real time. And instead of being offended, he was intrigued. They got coffee the next day. That turned into long walks, late-night takeout, music on vinyl. Her barefoot dancing in his condo like she owned the clouds. She didn't care that he ran Levi Tech. She cared about his values. She cared about his silence when he saw injustice. She cared when he stopped, showing up to volunteer after press coverage faded. She made him better, and that's exactly why his mother hated her. He could still hear her voice. "You can't be seen with a woman like that, Benjamin. She doesn't belong in our circles. It sends the wrong message." And he, weak, spineless, said nothing. He let their relationship fizzle, chose business meetings over dinner dates, gave her distance instead of commitment. Until one day she just stopped calling. And now she was down the hall, screaming through contractions, her body trembling, giving birth to twins. He couldn't breathe. "Mr. Levi?" The voice jolted him upright. Nurse Levi stood before him, her expression softer now. "She's stable. But there were complications. One of the twins is breech. We're moving fast." He swallowed hard. "Are they?" She paused. "We don't know. There's no father listed on her forms." She checked herself in, his hands curled into fists. Of course she didn't list him. She didn't owe him anything, not after the way he walked away. But still, something inside him cracked wide open. They could be mine. He pushed to his feet, his pulse pounding louder than the storm outside. "Can I see her? She's not asking for anyone." That hurt more than he expected. He saw Nurse Levi carrying a small cart of supplies and one of the blood bags from earlier. His blood, going into her body. He leaned against the wall again, but this time, not out of fatigue. Out of shame. The hallway quieted except for the rolling thunder outside and the muffled chaos behind the delivery room door. Benjamin stared at the small window in the door, eyes locked on the woman inside. Daphne's head lolled back, her brow glistening. She gripped the metal side rails with both hands, her body arching with another contraction. Her braids stuck to her forehead. Her lips trembled, not from pain alone, but from exhaustion, from loneliness. She was doing this alone. No one holding her hand, no family, no husband, no partner, no him. Every instinct in his body told him to burst through that door, but he stayed frozen. A war raged inside him, pride versus guilt, logic versus love. "You're 2 years too late. You walked away. You don't get to fix it now." But what if she never stopped waiting? 30 minutes passed like hours. He didn't move. Until Nurse Levi reappeared with urgency in her steps. "She's asking for you." He blinked. "What?" She asked for Benjamin. She was clear. He didn't hesitate. His hand met the cold door handle and pushed it open slowly. Inside, the room was hot, sterile, buzzing with beeping monitors. Dr. Matthew gave him a quick glance but said nothing. His focus was on Daphne, whose eyes fluttered open at the sound of the door. She looked straight at Benjamin, her body still trembling from the last contraction. "You came. I didn't know it was you. I just gave the blood. They didn't say—" A tear slipped down her cheek. "I didn't want you to feel forced. You've got your world, your empire. I've got this—" A hard contraction cut her sentence in half. She screamed, gripping his hand instinctively. Her fingers laced through his like muscle memory. He didn't flinch. Dr. Matthew snapped instructions. "Okay, here comes the first one. Deep breaths. Almost there." Another cry, this one new, high-pitched, tiny. A nurse smiled wide. "First baby's out. A girl!" Daphne sobbed. Benjamin blinked rapidly, watching the small, wriggling child being wiped down and swaddled. Before he could react, a second cry followed. Dr. Matthew beamed. Another girl, healthy, both doing well. Benjamin couldn't breathe. 2 daughters. Nurse Levi turned to him gently. "Would you like to hold one?" He looked at Daphne. She nodded, a trembling smile crossing her face. He stepped forward, hands unsteady. The nurse placed a small bundle into his arms. Warm, fragile, alive. The baby blinked at him, mouth puckering. Daphne's voice broke through the quiet. Her name is Peace. He nodded slowly. And the other? Her eyes didn't leave his. Her name is Grace. His chest tightened. Grace, he whispered. Why Grace? Daphne gave a soft smile, though her eyes glistened. Because it's what I needed to find the strength to raise them. He lowered his head, cradling Peace against his chest. The tech empire, the billions, the headlines. None of it compared to this moment, to this life, to this love, to this second chance. The floor-to-ceiling windows of Levi Tech's executive suite glowed faintly against the storm-tossed skyline of Houston. Thunder cracked in the distance, but inside the room, silence reigned. Benjamin Levi sat alone behind his expansive desk, sleeves rolled, his custom-tailored shirt slightly creased, a rare deviation from his perfection. He'd been working for hours, but not a single line on the quarterly brief held his attention. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. Something had been off lately, a restlessness he couldn't explain. Not in dollars, not in headlines, not in stocks. His phone buzzed beside a glass of untouched bourbon, unknown number. He normally never answered those, but for some reason, tonight felt different. He picked up. Levi, the voice on the other end was urgent, professional. Mr. Levi, this is Houston General. You're listed as the closest O-negative blood match on the emergency registry. We have a patient in critical need. He sat up straighter. Do I know the patient? He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then exhaled. Text me the address. I'm on my way. He ended the call and grabbed his keys from the drawer. His assistant had just left for the evening. No need to alert her. The Porsche roared to life in the underground garage. As rain battered the windshield and the wipers fought for visibility, Benjamin felt something inside him stir, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Urgency, not for a meeting, not for profit, for something human. The security officer at the ER entrance barely had time to react before Benjamin pushed through the glass doors, his black dress shoes squeaking on the polished floor. A nurse recognized him immediately, not because he was famous, but because he carried the type of presence that turned heads in every room. Mr. Levi? She asked, stepping forward. He nodded once. The irony of her last name didn't go unnoticed. He gave her a look but said nothing. They walked past crying families, busy orderlies and wheeled patients. The hum of urgency filled the air. Still, Benjamin kept his distance, emotionally. His mind automatically filtered out distractions. This was a transaction, a request, a response, and he'd be on his way. But Nurse Levi's voice lingered. Not many people in your position show up for something like this, she said as they turned down a corridor. Let alone during a storm. I don't need a medal for being decent, he replied flatly. But decency isn't common. They reached the donor station. He removed his blazer, rolled up his sleeve, and watched the nurse prep the equipment. His pulse stayed even. His face remained unreadable, but deep inside something was shifting, cracking the armor he'd worn since her. As the blood began flowing into the bag, he stared at the red stream and thought, who could it be? Why do I feel this tightness in my chest? Inside, a seed of something unfamiliar took root, not fear, not sadness, recognition of what, he couldn't yet say. Benjamin's phone buzzed on the side table again. Quinn, Tokyo team on standby, need confirmation before midnight. Quinn, media sniffing at Thursday's board move. Want a comment? He stared at the screen. Did he care? The quarterly merger was worth over $50 million. A delay would set the tech press ablaze, but for once he didn't feel the usual itch to respond. He locked the phone and turned it face down. The blood bag was nearly full now. Nurse Levi checked the line and replaced it with a new pouch. You're doing great, she said. A couple more minutes. He nodded absently. His eyes were on the hallway now. Something tugged at the edge of his thoughts, like static behind the noise. He remembered his last conversation with Quinn earlier that day. The Tokyo deal is a legacy move, Ben. Lock it in, and you become a name they study in business schools. He'd grunted a reply and closed his office blinds. It should have thrilled him. But all he could think about now was the stranger behind those ER walls who needed his blood. Someone who might never even know he showed up tonight. He looked down at the bag again. It was half full, pulsing in rhythm with the beat of his heart. And that was when he felt it, a flicker of unease. Not fear, but familiarity. He just didn't know why yet. Nurse Levi removed the needle carefully and wrapped a compression bandage around his arm. "You're done." She handed him a juice box and a protein bar. "Protocol. You'll need to sit for 10 more minutes before leaving." Benjamin sat in the waiting chair and opened the juice mechanically. Artificial grape. Again. He was midway through a sip when yelling broke through the hallway. "Get that stretcher ready, now! She's crowning. We're losing time." Benjamin stood instinctively, his juice box forgotten on the floor. The corridor filled with movement. Doctors, nurses, rolling equipment. An orderly pushed an incubator through a side door. The tension wasn't just professional, it was personal. Someone was in real danger. A stretcher burst through the swinging ER doors, surrounded by nurses. The woman on the bed writhed in pain, her hands clutching the rails, her breath coming out in panicked gasps. Benjamin's eyes focused in the low light, the sweat-matted braids, the trembling lips. His breath caught. It couldn't be, but it was. His feet refused to move. Every muscle in his body locked. She passed just a few feet in front of him, strapped to the stretcher, her eyes squeezed shut, her brow furrowed in pain. Until she opened them, and saw him. "Ben?" she gasped. It wasn't just a cry of surprise, it was disbelief, hurt, confusion, years compressed into one whispered name. His heart slammed against his chest. "Daphne," he whispered, but she was already gone, wheeled down the hall, swallowed by swinging doors and urgency. He stood frozen, the name echoing in his chest. Daphne Rivers. He hadn't said that name out loud in 2 years, not since the night she walked away from his condo, from him. She hadn't changed. She looked stronger, more fragile, fierce and soft all at once. She was pregnant, about to give birth, alone. His blood had been for her. It all clicked in one unbearable instant. He was no longer standing in an ER. He was 20 feet back in memory, back to the first time they met, a charity banquet in 5th Ward. She wore a simple blue dress, no heels, no makeup, but she commanded the room more than the CEO giving the keynote. She'd challenged him that night. "You can donate tech, Mr. Levi," she'd said. "But if you don't show up for the kids behind those screens, what's the point?" Everyone laughed nervously. He didn't. He asked her to coffee. That coffee turned into late-night takeout. Takeout turned into evenings, where her laugh filled his apartment more than the sound of CNN. She grounded him. She taught him how to slow down. He taught her nothing, except maybe how to guard her heart. Because when his mother found out, everything changed. "She's not one of us, Benjamin. You have a legacy to protect. These women always come with complications." And he let silence speak for him. He stopped showing up, took longer to call, shortened their time together, until one day, she stopped calling altogether. Now she was here, in the same hospital, in labor, alone. And he donated the blood that might be keeping her alive. His breath turned shaky. Daphne hadn't just been a chapter in his past. She might be the story he was supposed to finish. Benjamin remained seated in the quiet hallway outside the delivery room, his hand pressed against his forehead as everything inside him churned. The hospital's rhythm moved around him, hurried footsteps, muted conversations, the hum of machines, but his focus tunneled inward, back to the very first moment he saw Daphne Rivers. It had been at a charity event 2 years ago, a partnership between Levi Tech and a youth center in 3rd Ward. Benjamin had only attended because his PR team insisted. He arrived late, slightly annoyed, and completely out of place in a room full of teachers, community workers, and volunteers who didn't care about shareholder projections or stock valuations. He spotted her near the front of the room, standing confidently at the podium in a simple navy dress, her braids pinned back, her voice steady as she spoke about the importance of mentorship for young teens. But it wasn't her beauty that first captured him, it was her conviction. She spoke with sincerity, fire, and grounded truth. She thanked donors, but challenged them too. She didn't fawn over wealth nor bend under status. She had presence without pretending. He couldn't look away. After the speech, she wandered through the room, greeting parents and kids, laughing freely, hugging people, connecting with them like she was stitched into the very fabric of the community. He approached her afterward, You spoke well, he said. She smiled without hesitation. I didn't do it for applause. Most people tried to impress him. She didn't. Do you work at the center? He asked. I live here. These are my people. This is my neighborhood. Her tone held no insecurity, only pride. I make sure kids here see a future beyond what the world assumes for them. Her confidence pulled him in like gravity. In that moment, surrounded by folding chairs and handmade posters, Benjamin felt something he hadn't felt in years. Admiration without calculation. They exchanged numbers, not because she wanted a CEO's attention, but because she sensed something sincere in him, a softness buried beneath all the layers he wore. Their first coffee turned into several more. He found himself driving to Fifth Ward after long workdays just to sit with her on the youth centre steps while she told stories about the kids she mentored. Her world was smaller but richer. His world was larger but emptier. And slowly, without either of them saying it out loud, they fell. Not in the glamorous, staged way the tabloids loved, but in real moments. Shared meals, late-night talks, small gestures. She wasn't impressed by his money, his building, or his billionaire circle. He wasn't intimidated by her kindness or her truths. They saw each other, really saw each other, and that scared him more than anything else. Their relationship blossomed quietly. He'd pick her up after work. She'd visit his condo only when her schedule allowed. They didn't announce anything. They didn't rush. Everything felt right, until his mother found out. He had never planned to tell her, not because he was ashamed of Daphne, but because he already knew the reaction he was going to get. His mother was a woman molded by old money habits, rigid social circles, and a sharp eye for maintaining family reputation. One evening, she dropped by his penthouse unannounced. She found Daphne there, sitting comfortably on the couch while reading a book and drinking tea, wearing sweats, her hair tied back, completely unaware she was about to be judged. His mother froze. Daphne stood politely. Benjamin felt the shift in the air. I didn't realize my son entertained guests, his mother said, her tone cold. Daphne extended her hand. I'm Daphne. It's nice to meet you. His mother barely touched her fingers before pulling away. Ah, I see. Benjamin's jaw clenched, but he said nothing, something he regretted instantly. Later, his mother cornered him in the kitchen. This is unacceptable, she hissed. She doesn't belong in your world. She's kind, smart. She's not from our circle. She doesn't have the background, the connections, the poise expected for your future. You're aiming for a global brand. You cannot attach yourself to someone who will affect your trajectory. He felt the sting of shame, not toward Daphne but toward his own weakness. The pressure to maintain an image had haunted him since childhood, and now it threatened to swallow the one person who brought peace to his life. The worst part, Daphne heard the entire conversation from the living room. She didn't confront him, she didn't complain. She simply gathered her things quietly that night and went home. But she didn't leave the relationship. Not yet. She gave him a chance to speak up, to stand up, to choose. And he didn't. He kept the peace with his mother, and in doing so, he unsettled the peace with Daphne. The distance grew not because of arguments, but because of silence. His silence. And silence destroys more relationships than words ever could. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those evenings where the world outside seemed calm, but the tension inside him was unbearable. Daphne invited him to a community celebration at the youth centre. The city had funded a new library wing, and she wanted him there, not as a donor, but as a partner, someone who cared. He agreed at first, but earlier that day, his mother sent him a message reminding him of a high-profile dinner with influential investors, an event she carefully curated for him. This is the room where legacies are shaped, she told him. You need to be in it. He stood at a crossroads, literally with his car idling near Midtown. Left turn would take him to Daphne. Right turn would take him to the dinner. He gripped the steering wheel. He told himself he'd stop by her event afterward. He told himself she'd understand. He told himself this dinner mattered more in the long run. He made the right turn. At the dinner, applause and powerful handshakes surrounded him. But he couldn't smile. He couldn't focus. He couldn't breathe right. His phone buzzed once. Daphne, I thought you were coming. He didn't reply. Hours later, he arrived at the youth centre parking lot, empty except for a dim porch light. She stood outside waiting, though the event had ended long ago. Her eyes said everything. You chose them, she whispered. He stepped forward. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I didn't need you to impress anyone. I needed you to show up. She walked toward her car. Daphne. She turned, pain etched in her face. You keep telling me you care, but caring without action is just noise, Ben, and I've learned to stop confusing noise for love. The door shut gently. Not slammed, just closed, and he let her drive away. That was the night everything shifted. She didn't call him after that. He didn't call her. Pride guarded his phone. Hurt guarded hers. Their love story didn't end because they fell out of love. It ended because he failed to stand up when it mattered, and that failure would haunt him for 2 years. The memory dissolved the moment another scream echoed from inside the delivery room. Benjamin snapped back to reality, to bright lights, rushing doctors, and Daphne fighting through contractions as her body trembled. Through the glass panel, he saw her grip the bedrail with a force that made her knuckles pale. Sweat rolled down her cheeks. Her lips trembled through ragged breaths. Dr. Matthew moved swiftly, his voice controlled and steady, issuing instructions to the team. Benjamin's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She wasn't the strong woman standing in a navy dress at a fundraiser. She wasn't the woman who challenged him at a youth center. She wasn't the serene presence drinking tea in his penthouse. She was a mother in distress, alone. Vulnerable, terrified, and he wasn't allowed inside. Every part of him burned with guilt. He wanted to help, he wanted to support her, he wanted to undo 2 years of distance. But all he could do was stand there, watching the woman he once planned a future with fight for her life and the lives of her babies. His chest tightened until it ached. The storm outside raged again, wind howling through the hospital's exterior vents. But the real storm was swirling inside him. She shouldn't be alone. Why is she alone? Where is her support? Who abandoned her? Every question cut deeper, until the final unspoken one surfaced. Why didn't she call me? Nurse Levi returned, clipboard in hand, her scrubs slightly rumpled from rushing. Mr. Levi, she said gently, I thought you should know. The patient checked in by herself, his eyes narrowed. No emergency contact. None listed. He swallowed, breath shallow. What about the father? Nurse Levi hesitated. Her professionalism held steady, but her voice softened. There is no father listed on her chart, she said quietly. No partner, no next of kin. The words collided with his chest so hard he took a step back. No father listed, no one at her side, no one to call, no one to wait with her. She had walked into this storm, into this hospital, into labor, alone. His hand gripped the wall beside him for balance, but the truth was right in front of him. She faced everything without him. The guilt punched him harder than any physical blow. What about her condition? He asked, voice tight. The team is with her. One of the babies is breech, but we're doing everything we can. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were filled with a determination he hadn't felt since the day he lost her. He pressed his palm against the glass window of the delivery room door. He wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. Not again. Benjamin sat stiff in the waiting area, his arms tense, feet anchored to the floor like concrete blocks. The echo of Daphne's voice, that startled gasp of Ben, still rang in his ears. Her face, twisted in pain and disbelief, refused to leave his mind. He stood and began pacing. His pulse hadn't settled since Nurse Levi confirmed Daphne had no listed emergency contact, no father, no one. She had walked into the hospital alone, in labor, her body screaming, and still she hadn't called him. Unless she never expected him to show up in the first place. He turned to the nurse's station just as Nurse Levi returned from down the corridor, her gloves removed and hands freshly washed. He stepped toward her. Was the blood I gave, was it for her? Her eyes hesitated. Mr. Levi, please, he said quietly, voice raw, I need to know. She sighed, lowering her tone. Yes. The blood was for Miss Rivers. She was in early distress when she arrived. Her levels were critically low, and we couldn't locate any next of kin. You were the closest eligible match on file. His head dropped slightly, like the final puzzle piece had snapped into place. Of all the people in the entire registry, fate had chosen him. The thought clawed through him. He hadn't just stumbled into this night, he had been pulled into it. His blood was flowing into her veins right now. The same woman he let go without a fight. The same woman now fighting through labor just yards away. He leaned against the wall, breathing unevenly. What are the chances? He asked, Stranger things have happened in this building, Nurse Levi replied gently. But some things feel personal. He nodded once, too personal. And suddenly he wasn't just a donor, he was tethered, and possibly to the babies she was bringing into the world. Emergency C-section may be necessary if she doesn't progress in the next 10 minutes. The sentence floated through the hallway like a blade. Benjamin turned his head toward the delivery room's window. The view inside was chaotic but controlled. Nurses surrounding Daphne, Dr. Matthew monitoring her vitals, another nurse prepping an oxygen mask. Daphne's cries had grown shorter, deeper, not just from pain but exhaustion. She was slipping. Dr. Matthew's voice carried again. First twin is low and in position, but the second one, breech and showing signs of distress. Benjamin's fists clenched at his sides. He didn't understand every term, but he understood the urgency. He saw one nurse grab the portable ultrasound machine. Another adjusted. The fourth, the anesthesiologist, entered, his presence making the reality even heavier. Benjamin stepped closer to the door, instinct driving his every move. "Mr. Levi," Nurse Levi warned gently, "you can't go in just yet." "I'm not trying to interfere," he murmured, eyes still locked on Daphne's face, pale and drawn. "I just need to be here." Nurse Levi didn't argue. Inside, Daphne clutched the bedsheets with trembling hands, her breathing labored, her body barely responding to instruction. And Benjamin stood outside, helpless. The storm outside intensified, matching the pressure inside him. He had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, navigating corporate takeovers, cracking through tech infrastructure that made other CEOs sweat. But he had no control here, none. And the one person he let down most was now being torn apart while he watched through a pane of glass. Dr. Matthew was not new to labor emergencies, but even his face had tightened. Baby A's heart rate is steady, but baby B is in breech position and showing variable decelerations. "Twins always run more complex," one nurse whispered. Dr. Matthew adjusted his gloves, speaking in rapid succession to the team. "Let's prep for surgical backup, but we'll attempt natural delivery unless vitals crash." Benjamin leaned his head against the doorframe. He remembered Daphne once telling him during a casual dinner that twins ran in her family. She joked about being built for chaos, even though she always radiated calm. She had no idea how right she was. Now, she was experiencing a storm of her own, a physical, emotional, and spiritual one, without anyone beside her. Dr. Matthew called out another instruction: tilt her to her left, increase oxygen flow. "Let's give that second baby space," Benjamin exhaled harshly. Each clinical term felt like a punch. He'd stood behind glass before, watching products being manufactured, factories processing code into devices. He'd stood behind double-paned windows watching stock tickers race on foreign screens. But this wasn't a business deal. This was life, real, raw, messy, and possibly his. "We will, I promise." He nodded slowly. He hated waiting. But for once he accepted that it wasn't about him. It was about her, about what she was carrying, what she chose to protect, even without him. He sat back down, but his foot tapped restlessly against the tile. His chest hadn't stopped aching since the moment he realized the babies might be his. And the guilt? It clawed harder now. He had never asked her if she was okay after they parted ways. He'd never texted, never called, never wondered aloud what became of her. He assumed, falsely, that she would move on, that if she wanted him in her world, she'd say so. But now it all made sense. The way she looked at him on the stretcher, not just surprised, but betrayed. She'd carried something alone, possibly two someones. And he wasn't there to help her through a single minute of it. The betrayal wasn't one-sided. He had betrayed himself. He remembered their nights, her warmth beside him, her voice soft in his ear after a long day, the way she made his penthouse feel less like a museum and more like home. He remembered the look on her face when she saw his mother at the door, the pain she swallowed when he didn't defend her. All of it now boiled to the surface, rising like steam through a cracked foundation. This wasn't just about two babies. This was about the wreckage he left in his wake, and whether he had the courage now to face it and repair what remained. Nurse Levi returned quietly with a calm but firm voice. Still no significant dilation for the second twin. "We're watching closely. You'll be updated the moment it changes." Benjamin nodded, but his focus wasn't on her words anymore. It was on the thought that kept crashing into his brain like a rogue wave. Are they mine? He knew what the math said. 2 years, no contact. But she hadn't been involved with anyone publicly. No partner, no new name, no ring, and the timing, it fit. He rubbed his temples, trying to keep his mind from spiraling. It wasn't about ego or responsibility. It was something deeper. Hope. The idea that somewhere life had been growing from something they once shared, something they both thought had ended. His throat tightened as he looked at the door again. Was he already a father and just didn't know it? Had he already failed 2 daughters before ever meeting them? He stood and paced again. When he reached the nurse's station, he stopped. If the babies are mine, what happens next? Nurse Levi looked at him for a long moment. That depends on what you choose to do with that truth, she said. Blood might connect you, but love is what holds people together. He didn't respond, but he stayed exactly where he was. Inside the delivery room, the atmosphere had shifted from focused intensity to delicate panic. Dr. Matthew moved quickly now, sleeves damp with effort. Baby A is crowning. Nurse, position steady. Oxygen holding. Let's move. Daphne's body trembled. Her arms fell weakly to the sides after one last guttural push. Then, a sound. A thin, sharp cry sliced through the room. "First baby's out," the nurse called. Benjamin heard it from the hallway. His breath caught. He moved toward the small window again, chest rising with the urgency of the moment. Through the glass he saw the newborn, covered in vernix, tiny limbs flailing, placed quickly into a warming bassinet. The nurse checked vitals, heart rate strong, breathing normal, she's stable. Daphne, though exhausted, turned her head slowly to the side, eyes dazed but searching. Her lips parted. "Is she okay?" she whispered. "She's doing great," Dr. Matthew replied. "But we need your strength now. Second baby's not descending." Breach confirmed. The room tightened again. No one celebrated yet. The second twin was in distress. A nurse switched out gloves, nodding to the anesthesiologist. The fetal monitor ticked erratically. Dr. Matthew called it fast. "We don't have time. Manual repositioning first. If that fails, we prep surgical." Outside, Benjamin pressed his hand to the glass. He had no medical training. He didn't understand every call being made, but he understood pain, and what he saw on Daphne's face now, a mix of fear, fatigue, and raw courage, would stay with him forever. One child safe, the other not yet. Benjamin didn't realize he was holding his breath until the second cry finally pierced the air. It wasn't as loud as the first. Thin, wobbly, real. He staggered a step backward from the window, his hand instinctively covering his mouth. 2 cries, 2 lives, 2 girls. The hallway that had once felt sterile and impersonal now pulsed with meaning. A nurse emerged from the delivery room moments later, adjusting her mask. She didn't look at him at first. She just removed her gloves and dropped them in the bin. He stepped forward. "Both babies?" She paused, then met his eyes. "Alive. The first is doing beautifully. The second is breathing on her own now, smaller but responsive." He nearly collapsed against the wall. The twins were here. They were breathing. His mind began spinning. Car seats, bassinets, names, birthdays. Names. He didn't know their names. He didn't even know if they were his. But as he stood there, outside a hospital delivery room, the sound of those 2 cries burned into his chest like a brand. He had never known a moment like this, and he knew, with certainty, he would never forget it. Nurse Levi reappeared a few minutes later, clipboard in hand, her face noticeably softer. "She's asking for you," she said. Benjamin's feet moved before he could process the sentence. The delivery room had quieted. Overhead lights were lowered. Machines still beeped, but the urgency had eased. Inside, Daphne lay in bed, drenched in sweat and draped in hospital linens. Her braids clung to her forehead. Her chest rose and fell in slow, exhausted heaves. One of the babies rested beside her in a bassinet, pink, peaceful. The other was still being monitored on a small oxygen assist crib nearby. Nurses hovered close, double-checking her vitals. But the moment Daphne saw Benjamin walk in, something shifted in her eyes. Tears welled instantly. "You really came," she whispered. He stepped closer, hands trembling. "I didn't know it was you. I just got the call. They needed blood. I said yes." She tried to smile, but emotion overpowered it. I didn't list anyone. I didn't think anyone would come. He moved to her side, gently brushing damp hair from her cheek. I'm here now, he said, voice thick. I'm not leaving. They didn't need to talk about the past in that moment, not about what ended them, not about the silence, not about the mistakes. All that mattered was that she wasn't alone anymore. Not in this room, not in this fight, not with him. Tears streamed down Daphne's cheeks as her body sank further into the hospital bed. She'd been strong for hours. Through the pain, through the fear, through the unknown. Alone. Until now. You really came, she repeated, more to herself than him. Benjamin sat beside her, careful not to crowd her, his hand resting lightly over hers. I thought about you every day, he said. Even when I tried not to. She laughed faintly, shaking her head. You disappeared. I did, he admitted. But not tonight. Not anymore. She looked toward the smaller twin, still in the assisted crib, then toward the other beside her. I was terrified, she confessed. Carrying two, not knowing if I could do it alone. I told myself I'd be fine, that I'd survive. But every single night, I wished I wasn't doing this by myself. He closed his eyes for a second. I should have been there. Every appointment, every step. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't cold. It was heavy, the kind of silence that came when two people were figuring out how to start again. Are you angry? He asked. Daphne turned to him, her gaze soft but steady. I was, but I think I was more hurt. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to beg you to be part of something you walked away from. I didn't want my daughters to grow up thinking they weren't enough for you. Benjamin flinched at the word. Daughters, plural. I want to be their father, he said. I want to be everything I wasn't before, and this time. She didn't stop him. Nurse Levi stepped in quietly. She's stable now. You can hold her if you'd like, she said, motioning to the smaller twin. Benjamin stood slowly. His hands reached out instinctively, steady despite the storm inside him. The nurse gently placed the tiny baby in his arms. She barely weighed more than a handful, her breath soft and rapid, fingers curled like little question marks. He looked down at her face. Her skin was soft with a golden undertone. Her nose was familiar. Her mouth slightly parted. She blinked once and yawned. Something cracked in him. What's her name? He whispered. Daphne watched him, her voice fragile. Peace, she said. I named her Peace, and the other? He asked, gently rocking. She hesitated. Her voice came quietly, almost too quietly. Her name is Sarah. His breath hitched. He looked up sharply. Sarah, he repeated. Daphne nodded. Your mother's name? His arms tensed slightly. Why would you? She gave a tired smile. Because even though she didn't accept me, I wanted our daughter to carry a name from your side. I didn't want either of them growing up thinking they didn't come from something. He swallowed hard, blinking back moisture. That's a grace I don't deserve, but it's the kind they'll need, Daphne replied. Benjamin looked down at Peace again. Then across the room at the other crib, where the stronger twin slept peacefully, unaware of the healing that had already begun. He didn't know what kind of father he'd be. But he knew this, he was done being absent, from them, from her, from everything that truly mattered. The hospital hallway had thinned out, visitors gone, lights dimmed, vending machines humming in tired rhythm, but Benjamin Levi hadn't moved from the maternity floor since the moment Peace and Sarah took their first breaths. A single chair beside Daphne's recovery bed became his anchor. The nurse had offered him a guest cot. He refused it. Instead, he sat, elbows resting on his knees, his eyes bouncing between the baby's cribs and the 4-drip beside Daphne's bed. Peace lay swaddled near her chest, breathing peacefully. Sarah, slightly stronger, dozed in a bassinet near the window, her small chest rising and falling beneath the soft pink blanket. Benjamin had never felt so full and so hollow at once. He wasn't used to silence that held weight. Usually, silence meant strategy. A pause between negotiations, a breath before the next pitch. But this silence held truth. It echoed with everything he never said, everything he should have done. The hours crept by, midnight passed, then 1, then 2. And still, he didn't leave. He texted his assistant to cancel the Tokyo Zoom. He didn't explain, he didn't feel the need. For once, the Empire could wait. Because the women in this room, one he loved and two he might have created, needed something more than money. They needed him present, not perfect, not powerful. Just there, and he was, all night. Benjamin's thoughts wandered as the minutes ticked on. He remembered growing up under the sharp eye of Celeste Levi, the socialite, philanthropist, and public sculptor of the Levi name. She never raised her voice, but her words carried the weight of cement. You'll build companies, not families that drain you. You are a Levi. Remember what that means, always. At 10, he learned how to tie a tie. At 12, he knew which forks went with which course. At 15, he was coached on networking at funerals. By 20, he had shadowed hedge fund meetings, already molded for his legacy. Love. Love was a distraction, or worse, a weakness. His mother always said affection should be managed, not chased, and when she met Daphne, bright, authentic, untouched by high society's rules, her disapproval wasn't just subtle. It was surgical. She's kind, Benjamin had said. She's a liability, Celeste snapped back. She doesn't know how our world works. She doesn't need to. You're choosing heart over heritage. He remembered how those words clung to him, how they made him feel small, like wanting joy was immature, like choosing peace over perception was a betrayal to everything he'd been groomed for. And he let that manipulation win. He wore the suit, took the meetings, sat at galas beside women who smiled for photos but never knew his soul. And in the process he'd lost the only woman who ever saw him without the armor. Now she lay in a hospital bed, recovering from a storm he never helped her weather, and he finally saw his mother's legacy for what it really was. A prison with velvet walls. 3 years ago, during Levi Tech's major funding round, Benjamin had brought Daphne to a board dinner as a quiet date. No titles. No spotlight, just support. But Celeste noticed immediately. She pulled him aside in the restroom hallway. She's in flats. She's comfortable, he said. She has no idea how high this table sits, and you're dragging her into a space built for strategy, not sincerity. He didn't argue. Not then. Not loud enough. Later that night, his mother made a toast about discipline in love and legacy. She never named names, but Daphne heard it. She excused herself mid-dinner, her dignity intact, her heart bruised. He followed her outside. You okay? He'd asked. She nodded. I'm used to being underestimated, but I didn't expect it from someone who says he loves me. He wanted to defend her, to fight, to shout, but instead he stayed silent. He let the moment pass, and shame settled in brick by brick. Public pressure followed too. Blogs speculated, shareholders whispered, partners asked questions cloaked in politeness. Is she part of the long-term plan? And each time he answered with vague phrases, protecting image over intimacy. Until eventually, she slipped through his fingers. Not with drama, not with noise, just with a quiet goodbye that said, I've waited long enough. And now, here he was, watching her sleep, while 2 girls with his eyes lay inches away. And the only legacy that mattered was theirs. It was just after 6 a.m. when Daphne stirred. The early morning sun broke gently through the blinds, casting a golden hue over the edge of the room. She turned her head, eyes still heavy but aware. Benjamin stood at the window holding Sarah, careful, calm. You didn't sleep, she said. He turned slowly. Didn't want to. She smiled faintly. You never could sleep when your thoughts raced. He walked over and placed Sarah gently back in her crib before sitting beside Daphne. I keep thinking about everything I didn't say. Everything I should have done, Daphne nodded. I used to think about that too. In the beginning, she shifted slightly, her voice quiet but sharp. I didn't call you because I didn't know which version of you I'd get. That's fair, he said softly. I knew your heart, when it was mine. But I also saw how quickly your silence could silence everything we had. He looked down, guilt crawling across his face. And I knew if I told you I was pregnant, you'd come back out of duty, not desire. And I couldn't raise daughters on a transaction. I didn't want pity, Ben. I wanted presence. Her words weren't angry. They were honest, and that honesty cut deeper than any argument. He reached for her hand. I didn't just come back out of obligation. I came back because hearing your voice in that hallway reminded me of who I used to be with you. She didn't let go of his hand. And for the first time in 2 years, they sat together, not as strangers or exes, but as people remembering how much they once mattered to each other. Benjamin helped the nurse adjust Daphne's tray while she tried sipping water. So what happens now? She asked. He sat again, rubbing his palms together. She watched him carefully, And when your mother finds out, he looked up. She already knows. She'll fight it. She can fight, he said. But I won't let her win this time. Daphne hesitated. You say that now, but when publicists start calling, when investors ask questions, I'll answer them honestly, even if it costs you everything. His jaw flexed. I lost everything when I lost you. That silence returned again. Not cold, not cruel, just loaded. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. I still love you, she added, then looked away quickly, as if she hadn't meant to say it aloud. His hands slid back over hers. I never stopped. Their foreheads leaned close. No kiss, no promises, just shared breath, shared weight, shared beginning. And between them, 2 daughters who represented the chance to rewrite everything. The morning after the birth, Benjamin stood at the foot of Daphne's hospital bed with both hands in his pockets. His usually sharp expression had softened, but something heavy brewed behind his eyes. Daphne noticed. Say it, she whispered. He hesitated. It's not that I don't believe you. I know. I need to know, for sure. Not because I doubt you, but because I doubted myself for 2 years, and I've lived in too many assumptions. Daphne held his gaze. I get it, she said. You need clarity, and maybe I do too. He took a careful seat beside her, not wanting to intrude. I don't want this test to feel like a transaction. I don't want to turn what we shared into paperwork. But these girls, they deserve certainty. I deserve to stop wondering what I walked away from. Daphne exhaled deeply. I'll agree to it, Ben. Not because you asked, but because you didn't accuse. There's a difference. A nurse soon entered, clipboard in hand, ready with paperwork for authorization. Daphne signed without flinching. Benjamin added his signature beside hers. It wasn't just ink on a page. It was the first time they were writing something together again. And whether or not the test returned the answer they both felt in their bones, they would deal with it, not separately, but side by side. That afternoon, Daphne sat propped up in bed, wearing a soft lavender hospital gown, both babies curled on either side of her. The look in her eyes wasn't hurt. It was clarity. She didn't need proof. Her heart had known from the moment they were born, but Benjamin did, and she respected that. When the nurse returned to collect samples, gentle swabs from inside the twins' cheeks, Daphne cradled peace while holding Sarah's hand. The babies squirmed a little but stayed calm. Benjamin stood nearby, arms folded, watching every motion with quiet reverence. Once it was done, the nurse gave a small nod. We'll send these out. Results will take 3 to 5 days, depending on processing. Daphne nodded. Thank you. As the door clicked shut, Benjamin stepped closer. You didn't have to agree so easily. I didn't do it easily, she replied. I did it because we can't rebuild anything on doubt. If this test brings you peace, then I'd rather hand it to you now than let it chip away at us later. He looked down at Sarah sleeping on his arm. Whatever that test says, she added, you're part of their story now. Blood or not, you showed up when they needed you most. That matters. His throat tightened. I hope they're mine. Her eyes softened. They already are. The waiting days turned into slow, stretching hours. Daphne remained in the hospital for recovery, and Benjamin made a decision no one expected. He stayed. Every morning he arrived with breakfast. Every night he refused to leave without whispering good night to both girls. Peace, more fragile, slept often. Her tiny fingers always curled tightly around Benjamin's thumb, as if holding on to him was instinct. Sarah was feisty, her cries sharper, her personality already more assertive. Benjamin laughed the first time she kicked his wrist during a diaper change. She's got your fire, he told Daphne. Daphne smiled. And your stubbornness. He held them both, took turns feeding bottles, changed his first diaper in a luxury suit with sleeves rolled and tie forgotten. Nurses began smiling when they saw him. Not because he was a billionaire CEO, but because he looked like a dad. No press, no attention, just a man in love with the quiet breaths of 2 tiny girls who didn't care about his last name. He read them stories, off the back of formula cans or from whatever books the nurses left behind. He talked about constellations, about building things, about courage. He whispered promises. I'll be here. I'll protect you. I'll never choose silence again. It was Thursday morning when Quinn, his longtime assistant, finally tracked him down. She didn't come alone. She brought a file folder, a tablet, and a list of calls missed from investors, partners, and publicists. "You've been off the grid, Ben," she said softly. "I've been where I needed to be." She nodded but didn't back down. "Someone leaked your name to a reporter downtown. Speculations are flying. Ex-girlfriend in labor. CEO donates blood. Vanishes from boardrooms. The press is circling." He leaned back in the hospital lounge chair, rocking Sarah slowly. "And your mother called twice. She's concerned. And Levi Tech's head of PR says if this hits the news cycle, you need a narrative. Preferably one without complications." Benjamin looked her dead in the eye. "This isn't a complication. This is my family." Quinn paused, lowering her voice. "I'm not here to shame you, Ben. I'm here to ask, are you ready for what this will cost?" He looked toward the nursery window, where Peace slept under soft white lights. "I've built a tech empire," he said. "What's the point if I can't show up for 2 lives I helped create?" Quinn nodded slowly. "Then I'll handle the fallout, but we'll need to prepare a statement." Benjamin stood. "You'll prepare the truth." Later that night, Benjamin walked the hospital corridor alone, making a single call. The line rang twice before connecting. "Landon," he said, speaking to Levi Tech's head of legal. "If anyone asks about Daphne or the twins, we tell them exactly what happened." "You sure about that?" Landon asked. "Because we can bury this under vague charity work. Keep it clean." He walked past a nurse adjusting charts, past a father bouncing a newborn, past a mother asleep in a recliner with a toddler beside her. He returned to the room where Daphne now sat up, Peace tucked into her chest, Sarah curling next to her side. Benjamin stood in the doorway for a moment. "Everything okay?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm telling the world the truth." She raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" "That I'm a man who nearly missed the best thing that ever happened to him, and that I plan to spend the rest of my life showing up." He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. Outside, stories might spin. But in this room, he had already chosen his story. One with no hiding. No shame. No silence. Just peace. And Sarah. And the woman who gave them both to the world. The peace of the maternity ward was disrupted by the unmistakable sound of heels. Sharp. Rapid. Echoing off polished linoleum. Celeste Levi entered Houston General like she owned it. Hair perfectly blown out. Pearl earrings, tailored cream coat, an expression carved in stone. At the front desk she flashed her ID and last name with clipped efficiency. "I'm here to see my son," she said. "Benjamin Levi. Where is he?" "Room 413. She didn't knock. She opened the door to see Benjamin seated near the window, holding Peace. Daphne sat upright in bed, adjusting Sarah's cap as the baby lay across her chest. The room froze. Celeste blinked once, took it all in. 2 babies, 1 woman. No ring. Then her lips curled. "So it's true." Benjamin rose slowly, still holding Peace in his arms. "Mother." She raised a hand. "Don't. Not now. Not after hiding this." Daphne remained seated but alert. Celeste turned her glare toward her. "You didn't waste time, did you? Securing a future the old-fashioned way." Daphne's jaw tightened, but she said nothing yet. Benjamin stepped forward. "What's your tone?" Celeste's voice lowered but sharpened. "I gave you every opportunity to protect your name. And this," she waved a hand toward the crib, "this is how you repay your legacy." Daphne held Sarah closer. Benjamin's grip on Peace grew firmer, but his voice remained calm. "You came all this way to shame a woman who gave birth to your granddaughters." Her silence spoke volumes. The war had begun. Celeste turned her cold eyes to Daphne. "You knew what you were doing," she said. "Getting pregnant by a Levi, knowing what it would look like. You didn't even bother calling him. You wanted him to walk into this, blindsided." Daphne slowly unhooked Sarah's swaddle and laid the baby back in her crib. She then turned to face Celeste, spine straight, voice steady. "I don't owe you anything," she said. Celeste raised her brow. "Excuse me. You heard me. I didn't call you. I didn't chase your son. I built a life without asking anyone for permission. I didn't need his last name to survive, and I certainly didn't need your approval to become a mother." Benjamin stood silent, letting the words hang in the air. Daphne stepped closer to Celeste, not aggressive but clear. "You think money is the measure of worth. But I've met kids who had nothing but love, and they grew up with more grace than any dinner party crowd you cling to." Celeste scoffed. "Grace doesn't secure trust funds. It doesn't manage inheritance. These girls they'll need honesty," Daphne cut in, "and strength, and parents who show up." Benjamin's heart swelled. For the first time, the two women in his life stood face to face, one clinging to image, the other holding on to truth. And there was no question whose words held weight. Celeste turned to Benjamin, arms crossed. "Are you really siding with her?" Benjamin placed peace gently into her crib, took a breath, and stepped in front of Daphne. "I'm not siding with anyone," he said. "I'm standing with the mother of my children." Daphne's eyes flickered, emotion swelling. Celeste's voice rose. "You're willing to throw away your name, your position—" "No," he interrupted. "I'm willing to finally stop living for someone else's expectations." A nurse peeked into the room, sensing tension, but Benjamin gave her a small nod. "It's okay." Not backing down. He turned to face his mother squarely. "You raised me to chase image. I chased it. I got the board seats, the media interviews, the billion-dollar valuation, and none of it feels as real as hearing my daughter's heartbeat for the first time." Celeste's lip twitched. Benjamin continued. "You said Daphne didn't belong. But what you didn't realize was, she's the only one who ever made me feel like I did." The air stilled. He looked toward Daphne, then back at his mother. "You can stay, and you can be part of their lives. Or you can walk out, the same way I almost did. But either way, I'm not choosing legacy over love again." For the first time in her life, Celeste Levi was speechless. And for the first time, Benjamin didn't flinch. 3 years ago, just after Benjamin started seeing Daphne seriously, there had been a moment, one that haunted him. They sat in the Levi family library. Shelves of law books, trophies, and oil paintings surrounded them. Celeste stood with a glass of sherry in hand. "You keep going down this road," she had said, "and I'll revise the trust." Benjamin had laughed at the time. "You'd cut me off?" Celeste didn't blink. Not to punish, to protect. He remembered the icy chill that followed. "You've worked too hard to be derailed by sentiment," she added. "Don't get weak. Not now." And then she dropped the line that broke him. "She's from a world that doesn't understand ours." He didn't respond that day. He left quietly, let the silence stretch. And a week later, he cancelled dinner with Daphne, the first time he didn't show up. He remembered how she didn't call him afterward. How she let his absence speak for itself. He told himself it was about timing, about strategy, that once things settled he'd return. But the truth? He let his mother's threats scare him into silence. He let legacy become a leash. Now, standing in that hospital room, the memory came rushing back, and this time, he wasn't choosing silence. Celeste stood stiff near the door, her purse clenched, her expression unreadable. Benjamin turned toward her slowly. "I won't chase your blessing," he said, "not anymore. I spent years playing the son you wanted, and it cost me everything that ever felt real." She said nothing. "I want my daughters to know courage. I want them to know it's okay to love fully even when it's messy. I want them to see a father who chooses presence, not position." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a leather envelope. "My legal team drafted new terms. If the trust is revoked, it's revoked. My shares are secured. My identity doesn't hinge on Levi Tech. It never did." Celeste's lips parted in shock. "You'd risk that much? I'd risk more if it means I never lose what I have now." He walked to Daphne's side and gently picked up Sarah, who stirred lightly, then blinked up at him with warm, sleepy eyes. "This is my legacy," he said, "and she doesn't need your last name to carry worth." Daphne blinked back tears. Celeste finally spoke, her voice brittle. "You're making a mistake." Benjamin smiled. "No, I'm making history." And with that, he turned his back on expectations, and toward the life he was finally brave enough to build. The envelope was small, white, and trembling in Benjamin's hands. He sat alone in the quiet hospital waiting room, moonlight filtering through the wide windows. The lights were low, and most of the nurses had gone quiet for the night shift change, but his pulse was loud. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. He exhaled, not in crushing relief. Not because he doubted the twins were his, no, not for a second, but because now no one, not even his mother, not even the board, could ever claim otherwise. He was their father, on paper, in truth, in name, in blood. His hands shook slightly as he folded the paper and slipped it into his coat pocket. He looked down the hall, toward room 413, where Daphne lay resting with the twins. He had missed the first months, the sonograms, the cravings, the tiny kicks, the cries, but he wouldn't miss another day. He walked down that hallway, Not as a CEO, but as a man whose entire world had just been redefined in ink. And in love. The next morning, Benjamin returned with coffee, soft blankets, and something folded inside a black envelope. He handed her the envelope and kissed Peace's tiny fingers. I want you and the girls to have space, comfort, security, no more shared apartments or elevator repairs. I found a place, gated, safe, close to the hospital and my office. Daphne opened the envelope. Inside was a deed draft and photos of a spacious sunlit brownstone with a backyard and nursery already being set up. Her heart twisted. It was beautiful. Too beautiful. Benjamin, she said softly, handing the envelope back. I can't. He looked confused. Why not? Because I didn't carry twins to be carried like a burden after... His jaw tightened. That's not what this is. He sat beside her. I want to protect you. I want to protect myself. They sat in silence. Two people wanting the same thing but approaching it from two different worlds. And Daphne, despite the tears that rose in her throat, placed the envelope on the table and didn't pick it back up. I'm not a charity case, she said softly, her gaze fixed on Sarah sleeping in the bassinet. Benjamin stood near the window, arms crossed, the hospital cityscape stretching behind him. I never saw you that way, he said. I know, she replied, but this, the house, the blank check behind your eyes, it feels like you're trying to fix something with furniture and square footage. He flinched, but nodded. She turned to him. I don't need your pity. He approached her slowly. It's not pity, it's regret. And maybe a little desperation. I can't lose you again. She held her breath. You already did, she whispered. When I needed you the most, I was alone. When I couldn't breathe through contractions, I was gripping a nurse's hand. When Sarah came first, and then Peace, I stared at the ceiling and cried because you weren't there. Tears ran freely now, but her voice didn't shake. I'm not saying don't help, but don't try to control the narrative. Don't make decisions for me. Benjamin slowly knelt in front of her chair. I hear you, he said. I swear, I hear you now. And for once, Daphne believed him. That night, Benjamin stayed, not with fanfare, not as the billionaire Levi tech face, but as a man who wanted to do the one thing he hadn't done in a long time, just be there. He fed Peace while Daphne nursed Sarah. He cleaned bottles when no one asked him to. He adjusted the room lighting when she looked tired, and brought extra pillows without saying a word. He never reached for his phone once. Daphne watched him quietly. And when the twins finally slept and the nurses dimmed the hallway lights, Benjamin sat on the couch across from her bed and looked at her. Really looked. I didn't come to impress you, he said. I came to show you that I've changed, and not in words. She pulled the blanket over her legs, her voice softer now. You really sat in that boardroom and told your mother off? He chuckled gently. I didn't yell, but I made it clear. Silence stretched between them, comfortable finally. Benjamin leaned back, arms resting on the couch. I should have shown up like this a long time ago. She gave a small smile. You're here now. And that, for the first time in years, felt like enough. The twins were finally asleep. The hospital room hummed with machines, the low murmur of distant nurses, and the rhythmic breathing of two tiny chests rising and falling in tandem. Daphne sat upright in bed, a blanket draped over her legs. Benjamin sat in the chair beside her, feet propped, arms crossed over his chest, but not sleeping. I used to wonder what kind of father you'd be, she said into the dark. He looked over at her. Now I wonder what kind of mother I'll become, she added. He smiled gently, a fierce one, soft in the right places, unshakable in the others. Daphne looked down. I had to be both for a while. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry you ever had to. They didn't touch, they didn't need to. The silence between them was filled with shared memories, some painful, some still healing. He told her about missing their first ultrasound because he believed his mother's threats. She told him about the night she stood alone in the kitchen, whispering to her belly that they'd be okay. He reached forward, palm up. She looked at it, hesitant, then placed her hand in his. It was warm, familiar. The next morning, the sun crept in gently through the blinds. The twins were stirring, but not yet crying. Daphne stretched, looked over at Benjamin, still in the chair, barely asleep, head resting on the edge of the crib. She stood slowly, walked to him, and touched his shoulder. He blinked, awake. "You don't have to sleep like that," she said, half smiling. "I didn't want to miss anything." She tilted her head. "You didn't." He rose, groggy, rubbing the back of his neck. "I could use a coffee," she laughed softly. "You and me both." They stood in silence for a beat too long. And then she stepped forward. "Benjamin." He turned fully. She touched his face lightly. "Not urgent, not hungry, just real. I don't know what we are," she said. "But this, what you did last night, it mattered." He cupped her cheek. "I'll wait," he said. "As long as it takes." She nodded. "I'm not asking for forever. Not yet." And then, before either of them second-guessed it, she leaned in. Their lips touched, soft, slow, unspoken. It wasn't a reunion. It was a whisper of hope. When they pulled apart, she smiled. "Let's just take it one diaper at a time." It started with a blurry photo outside St. Grace Memorial. A tabloid blogger posted an image of Benjamin Levi holding a pink car seat, face half-turned, eyes tender, next to a woman resembling Daphne entering a sleek SUV. Caption: "Billionaire CEO spotted with baby gear. Is he hiding a secret family?" It exploded in hours. Gossip blogs picked it up. Financial news segments speculated on unclaimed heirs. Twitter trends lit up with hashtags, #LeviHeirs. By morning, Levi Tech's media lines were flooded. A reporter even tried sneaking onto Daphne's apartment floor, pretending to deliver flowers. The building manager caught them. Daphne was in her robe, peace sleeping on her chest, when she saw the headline. Her heart dropped. She hadn't even told her cousins yet. Her own mother didn't know the full story. And now, strangers were dissecting her life for clicks. She called Benjamin. He picked up immediately. "I saw," he said before she even spoke. "I'm already on it." "Ben," she whispered. "I can't do this spotlight thing." He was quiet for a beat. "You won't have to," he promised. "Not alone." 2 days later, Benjamin called a press conference. No lawyers, no PR manager, no teleprompter. Just him at a podium with a single-framed photo placed beside the mic, Daphne holding the twins in the hospital room, her hair still messy, her eyes shining. "Good afternoon," he began, staring down the sea of cameras. "My name is Benjamin Levi." "Yes, that Benjamin Levi." Laughter rippled. He didn't flinch. "There have been a lot of rumors, and for once the media didn't get it all wrong." Murmurs rose. "I am the proud father of 2 daughters, twin girls. Their names are Peace and Sarah, and they are the best thing that's ever happened to me." His voice didn't waver, but his eyes gleamed. "I was absent at first. I missed their birth. I missed a lot, but I'm not missing another day. I am present, I am learning, and I am trying, not as a CEO, but as their dad." Silence, not a single flashbulb. He looked into the camera, and to the woman who carried them, protected them, and raised them while I failed to show up. "I'm sorry, publicly, and I thank you." Applause broke out, and somewhere, in a quiet living room with a baby on each side, Daphne cried. Not from shame, but from pride. Across Houston and beyond, headlines rolled in. CEO breaks down in press conference, admits to failing as a man. Benjamin Levi prioritizes fatherhood over fortune, world applauds from boardroom to bottle time, a billionaire's redemption arc. Stock analysts scratched their heads. Investors emailed questions, but surprisingly, the market didn't tank. In fact, Levi Tech's shares ticked slightly upward. People were talking, yes, but not about scandal. About honesty, humanity, rare things in a business built on polish. Benjamin's phone buzzed with texts. "From board members, you sure about this?" From his assistant, media wants exclusives. "Should I book?" From a former mentor, "Took guts, kid. I'm proud of you." But the only message that made him pause was one from Nurse Rena, who had assisted in Daphne's delivery. "Real men cry when they mean it. They don't hide behind titles. You did good." Meanwhile, Daphne watched as people reshaped their view of him. Her phone buzzed with people from her past. Some offered support. Others hinted at interviews. She stayed silent, but inside, something shifted. Not for fame, not for clout, but for their daughters, and maybe for her too. It was the 5th knock that made her answer. Benjamin stood outside her door, holding takeout and a wrinkled look of concern. "I brought that mushroom noodle thing you like." Daphne didn't smile. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said gently, "but I wanted to." He stepped in, placed the food down, and looked at her. "You've been quiet." She sighed. Because I'm overwhelmed, Ben. My face is being dissected on fashion blogs. They're guessing pieces, name like it's a guessing game. He sat on the couch. I didn't think it would go this far. But I should have. She sat across from him, arms folded. I don't want fame. I just want normal, soft mornings, no cameras in our bushes. He nodded. You'll get that, he said. We do this our way. She frowned. What does that even mean? He leaned forward. It means no forced interviews, no cover shoots, no press releases unless we write them together, no nanny from an agency you've never met. She searched his eyes. I want to protect you, he said, but I also want to honor you. And your pace. She let out a slow breath. What if our girls grow up Googling me and hate what they find? They won't, he said, reaching for her hand, because they'll know the truth from us, not from a screen. A week later, a sleek navy envelope arrived at Daphne's door. Inside was a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to the Levi Tech Annual Gala. This year's theme, Legacy and Light. Tucked beside it, a handwritten note. Come as you are. No press, no stage, no expectations, just family. B. She stared at it for a long time. In her heart, a war of emotions clashed. Memories of boardrooms, backhands from Selena, cold stares from upper society, all warned her to stay home. But something about Benjamin's recent steps, his press event, his presence, his restraint, told her this wasn't just an invitation. It was an olive branch. A gesture of belonging. Not just for her, but for the twins, and the version of herself she used to dream of being. She didn't buy a designer dress. She wore a soft champagne gown she'd saved from her college formal. When she arrived at the gala, Benjamin met her at the steps. He didn't kiss her hand. He didn't make a show. He whispered, "You look like the beginning of everything I prayed for." And they walked in, not as a couple, but as parents, as partners, as something still unnamed, but undeniably sacred. The ballroom glowed with elegance, soft chandeliers, string music, laughter clinking against polished glass. Yet all Benjamin saw, as he stood beneath the Levi Tech crest, was Daphne. She entered in that champagne-coloured gown again, the same one from college she'd refused to toss. Her curls framed her face, and the room shifted when she walked in. But it wasn't just beauty, it was presence. She wasn't hiding anymore. No longer the woman curled on a hospital bed, exhausted and alone. No longer the girl dismissed by society and scorned by his mother. Tonight, she was standing tall beside him, a mother, a woman with dignity, the one who carried his legacy in her arms and in her strength. People whispered. Board members traded glances. But Daphne, she didn't shrink. She held her head high, smiled at the curious stares, and placed a gentle hand on Benjamin's elbow. He turned to her. You sure you're okay? He whispered. She nodded slowly, her voice steady. They can look, but they can't define me. He smiled. That's the energy I fell for. A nearby donor chuckled, toasting their direction. That's what we call upgrading the brand, Mr. Levi. Daphne didn't flinch. She turned to the man, smiled warmly, and said, We're not branding anything. We're raising daughters. The donor blinked. Benjamin grinned. They hadn't even reached the stage yet, and she was already changing narratives. After the dinner course, the music softened. Benjamin stood, tapped his champagne glass, and the murmuring quieted. His board members sat near the front, all in tailored suits, half smiling but calculating. I know, he began, tonight was supposed to be about annual numbers, future projections, quarterly results, a few chuckles. But I think you've all seen the future already, and it's not on these slides. He gestured to the screen behind him. Instead of company charts, it displayed two pictures, one of him holding peace in the hospital, and one of Daphne laughing as Sarah tugged her curls. This, Benjamin continued, is where I'm investing now. Silence. One of the older board members, Mr. Sandwell, cleared his throat. Are you suggesting a pivot from core growth sectors to... I'm suggesting, Benjamin interrupted smoothly, that if Levi Tech is going to keep changing the world, it starts by acknowledging everyone in it. He looked around the room. There was a time I led with ambition and fear. I feared failure. I feared softness. I feared the kind of love that asks you to slow down and hold a child instead of a spreadsheet. He paused. But now I lead with purpose. Because of them... He didn't say Daphne's name. He didn't have to. Everyone turned to her, and for the first time she didn't lower her eyes. She owned the space, just like she'd owned every room where she wasn't expected to matter, and in that moment the room tilted. Some resisted. but most listened. And all were silenced by truth. Benjamin stepped back, allowing the screen to fade to black. A new image appeared, a digital logo, Project Horizon. Beneath it, Empowering Tomorrow's Innovators, sponsored by Levi Tech, in honor of Daphne Rivers. Gasps echoed. He continued, voice firm. Project Horizon will allocate $10 million in seed funding for young developers, coders, and visionaries from underserved neighborhoods, beginning right here in Houston. He gestured toward Daphne. This woman inspired it. When no one else saw value in her, she taught herself HTML in a laundromat. When she had nothing, she built tech solutions for childcare from scratch, for other single mothers. More gasps. Daphne looked at him, stunned. He'd never shared that story, not publicly, not even in private. But more than that, he said, locking eyes with her, she raised our daughters with dignity. She created futures before anyone gave her permission. So now we're giving others that same chance. One of the younger board members leaned forward. And you're naming it after her? Yes, Benjamin replied, because legacy is earned, and Daphne Rivers has earned every syllable. Applause erupted. Not just out of respect, but out of transformation. Because in that moment, Daphne wasn't just the CEO's former girlfriend. She was a symbol of resilience, of genius born outside privilege, of a future that didn't look like everyone else in that ballroom, but mattered even more. She didn't cry. She just stood, straight-backed, seen, for reverence. The gala was behind them. The headlines were already writing themselves. But in a small living room on the third floor of Daphne's apartment building, real life hummed in soft coos and quiet yawns. Peace suckled gently at a bottle in Benjamin's arms, her lashes fluttering. He rocked slowly, murmuring lullabies he remembered from childhood. Sarah whimpered in Daphne's lap, rubbing her eyes. Shush, sweetheart, Daphne whispered, patting her back. I'm right here. The room was dim, lit by a single floor lamp. The noise of the world couldn't reach them here. Benjamin glanced up. She has your eyes, he murmured. Daphne smiled. And your resting grump face, he chuckled. I used to think power was measured by silence in a boardroom, he said, adjusting Peace in his arms. But this is the real strength. Daphne kissed Sarah's curls. You're not wrong. He leaned back against the sofa. It's wild. I can close billion-dollar deals in less than an hour, but changing a diaper still makes me panic. She laughed softly. Welcome to parenthood. They didn't speak for a while, just the quiet breathing of their daughters, the subtle creak of the rocker, the peace of a room no camera could capture. He glanced over at her, his voice low. Thank you for not giving up on them. Even when you gave up on me. She met his gaze. Not bitter, just honest. I didn't give up on you, Ben. I just chose myself, and them. He nodded. And now I choose all three of you. The twins were asleep. Benjamin turned off the lamp, the room fading into soft shadows. He sat beside Daphne on the couch, their knees touching, neither of them moving. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Did you mean everything you said tonight? She asked. He turned slightly. Every word. And tomorrow? I'll still mean it. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, not tense, just full. She whispered, What if I'm still scared? He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Then we'll do scared together. Her breath hitched. Not from fear, from feeling. Because for the first time since that hospital hallway, she believed him. He turned slightly, brushed his lips against her knuckles. Daphne. This time. He paused, watching the rise and fall of their daughters' chests across the room. I'm not letting go. She didn't answer with words. She rested her head back on his shoulder and closed her eyes. And in that simple act, not of surrender but of trust, the chapter didn't just end. It began. A new one not defined by contracts or board meetings or press headlines, but by lullabies, by late-night feedings, by names whispered into tiny ears, and a love that, though fractured once, now held firm. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment your favorite moment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Mr. Victor's Storytime, where every tale is a journey of love, loss, and redemption.